Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth video of the series. In this video, we'll talk more in details about the Excel object system and the hierarchy within Excel. So what exactly is this Excel object system that we keep talking about? Let's start with this statement. VBA manipulates Excel objects via their properties and their methods. And let's break this down a little bit. So let's have a look at this graph that summarizes this pretty well. Microsoft Excel, which is the application, is the overarching structure. Within Microsoft Excel, you got objects like Excel workbooks. The workbook we're currently working on is an example of it. And within this workbook, you can find worksheets like these ones. You can find charts or Visual Basic projects. And there are a ton of different objects, and I'm not going to list all of them because, well, I wouldn't have enough space, basically. But I hope by now you get the idea of hierarchy. And the way we communicate with Excel via VBA is through these objects. For example, if I want to refer to a range, let's say range J27, I would have to link each of these objects via dots. And I would have to write something like application.workbooks, name of the workbook, dot worksheets, name of the worksheet, dot range. So this is how you connect each of these objects together within VBA, starting with the bigger one. And obviously, that's not something you have to write every time you want to refer to a range. I was just explaining the concept. So for a better understanding of it, let's dive into the Visual Basic. So we'll click on this, and I've prepared a little bit of code here just to show you how it works. So we'll start with the first sub, which I named select range 1. And this is using the workbooks.worksheets.activate method. In all these subs here, we're going to look to select a specific range, and I'm selecting the range C4. So let's see how to do this. Let's arrange our windows so that we can see the Excel spreadsheet in the same time. All right, this should work. Let's put this here a little bit, and let's go through our code. So we'll use the F8 function, which is the step through function. It goes line by line through every line of the code. So we're using the application Excel. We're linking it to a workbook, which is our current workbook called master file easy VBA. And we're linking both with a dot. The same thing happens for linking the workbook with its worksheets, the current worksheet called content video 4, and then we link this worksheet with an action or method. It's the method.activate. And all this line of code does is simply activating our spreadsheet. So let's say we're working on a different spreadsheet and we run the code. I press F8, and as you can see, it basically activated my spreadsheet. Now it went on to the next line, which is the range C4.select. Let's see what it's going to do. In this case, the C4 range is already selected, so let's select something else. Let's select our F1 range and run this code with F8 function. And here you can see it again, C4 range has been selected. And this way we can end our sub. But we're going to simplify the code a little bit because we don't want to be writing every time application.workbooks.worksheets just to select one range. So we'll skip this whole part here, this application.workbooks part, and dive straight with the worksheets.activate method. Using this method, Excel will simply assume that we're talking about the active workbook. So let's step through the code line by line. And we're using the worksheet.activate method. This will activate our current worksheet and then activate the range C4. we have selected, let's select another worksheet just to show you that the code works. It has selected the correct worksheet, and let's go through now the range C4 select, and indeed the range C4 select has been selected. Now let's go a little bit further. Let's simplify our code further. We're going to select, or we're going to use a simple range select method. By doing this, Excel assumes that we're referring to the active workbook and active worksheet. So we'll select a different worksheet, or like a different range, and we'll go through the code, step through line by line, and again, the range C4 has been selected. So this is how we actually act on the different objects in the Excel environment using methods. We saw until now the activate method, and we'll see some more later on. Now let's go back to our Excel spreadsheet, and let's discuss the next topic of the day, which is about collections. A collection is a group of objects of the same type. While coding, we often refer to workbooks, worksheets, or charts, all with S. And this is because all of these are collections. Forget the S and your code won't work. For example, a worksheets collection is basically all the worksheets of an Excel workbook, as you can see down here. Collections can be used for loops, which will be discussed in a later video. To cut a long story short, loops are a very, very powerful programming technique. It doesn't only concern VBA, but any other programming language. So up until now, we discussed the different objects in Excel, the concept of collections. Now let's talk about the object properties. All Excel objects have properties that are basically attributes for the object. VBA actions that can be applied to properties are twofold. You can either display the current properties of the object or change these properties. Okay, now let's see what this means in practice. Going back to our Visual Basic editor, let's reorganize our windows a little bit like earlier. And let's try to change the properties of this range here, C25, with the value object properties. We'll start as usual by creating a sub change value. Enter. Automatically Excel writes end sub, and I can write my code within. So I'll write range, open parentheses, open brackets, C25, closing the brackets and closing the parentheses, and I'll say dot value. And I will use here the equal operator to assign a value to my range. Now let's assign it a different value. The current value is basically object properties. We'll do the same except with capitals. Object properties. So we'll step through the code with the F8 function, and we'll observe what happens to the C25 range. Right, and that works. So this is how you modify the value property of a range. Now, if you want to just display the value, we can use a function that we used in one of the previous videos, which is the message box function. So we can say something like message box, open the parentheses, and we put the range C25 dot value, and then I close the parentheses. Let's give this a try. So we'll step through the code once again, and there you go. Object properties is the value of the range, so we're all good. Now that we discussed the object properties, let's go ahead and discuss the object methods. So, on top of the properties, objects have methods that apply an action to them. And here's a basic example. We can use the range h41 clear.clearContent method. And what this does is that it will go to the range h41 and clear the content. Earlier in the video, we used the .activate method. And there are countless different methods that you can apply to your objects. So we'll discover them bit by bit. For now, let's go back to our Visual Basic and let's try it out. So rearranging our windows, we'll now open a new sub. We'll say sub clear content, enter in. And now we'll use the clear content method to basically remove what's written in the, well, remove the content of the C34 range. So we'll have to write range C34 dot clear contents, and you can actually select it from the drop-down list. So now let's run the program. You can either step through with the usual F8 method, or you can press F5 for a complete rundown of the macro. I usually like F8 to just understand what's going on line by line. So going forward with the F8 method, F8 function, sorry. So we'll clear the content of the range C34, and that works. Now, obviously we want our content back. So what we can do is something that you actually is very encouraged within VBA or programming in general, is recycling your code. We can just go to our previous macro, copy paste it in our current program, and actually it would make more sense in this case to have this line below the clear content method, so that when we clear the content, we rewrite it back again after. All right, let's run our code, F8, and yeah, there you go. So that will wrap up our fourth video of the series. I believe after this we covered the basics of VBA, and this will allow us to go forward towards more complicated topics in coding with VBA. Thanks for watching. If you like the content and want to see more of these, be sure to hit the subscribe button.